for about the past 20 years now. I've also worked as a math teacher at the high school level and at the community college level. And right now I have my own business doing SAT and ACT test prep. Um, and I'll supply contact information. If anyone has any other questions about me, they can. Now, I will share my website with you, and we'll send people an informational email afterwards. So certainly you can feel free to take notes during the meeting. My website is at the top of the screen right now. However, we'll send you the link to the website too afterwards. And if you're on my website, number one, that I'd say that one of the most useful tabs for people is diagnostics and planning. This would be the tab where you can take a look at, links to diagnostic exams, a test calendar, and there's advice about planning dates and so forth. I will direct people also to, if you're looking for any classes or tutoring for either exam, that's the next two tabs. In terms of classes that are coming up for anybody that's thinking they want to really utilize the summer to prep for the August exam, that's kind of my heaviest time in terms of different class options. I have beginner, I have advanced. Some classes are in person and some are online. And if you want to see any details about like the exact schedules, each one of these are links and you can go in. And my test calendar, I'll probably update it and even go further out than the next December SAT so that you can do some long-term planning. But most classes are in kind of the 6 to 8 week realm. And you can kind of get a sense for like what material is covered in each class. But again, always feel free to shoot me a text or an email or a call. We'll email everybody afterwards and provide a lot more just kind of contact info and websites and so forth. But in terms of what we're going to end up doing tonight, and Jen, are you okay fielding the chat a little bit? And when questions come up, just
Yes,
interrupt?
absolutely. I'm gonna field the chat for you.
Perfect.
And I did
Um,
put your website in the chat as well.
oh, great. Awesome. Awesome. So in terms of what I want to do tonight, what I'm going to do first is kind of the exam calendar and recommended student timelines if you're a rising junior or if you're a rising senior. I'm going to talk about like how to study for the SAT or ACT, whether or not you're doing a formal prep program, what are the right materials, and in what ways should you prep. I will give an overview of each exam, SAT and ACT, and I'll give a little bit of info on how to determine which exam is right for you. So in terms of item number one on the agenda, the exam calendar, I'm actually gonna now take you back to my website. And I'll point out again that this is under the diagnostics and planning tab. So I will have an updated test calendar. You'll see kind of underneath here, plan your dates carefully. And there's a link to SAT and ACT deadlines. So I'm going to use SAT test dates as a good example of timeline, but I'll at the end of this I'll also drift down to ACT a bit. So let's talk about first if you are a rising junior. So for rising juniors who have taken algebra 2. Then what should be the timeline? Now, why do I specify who have taken algebra 2? And that means like, are you finishing it up right now in your sophomore year? That's important because the SAT does test you up through Algebra 2. So you don't want to get to the ball game too early. But if you're as a sophomore, if you're finishing up Algebra 2 now, then I would say you are kind of eligible to go ahead and go after the SAT as soon as you want. So I would say you can take the SAT as soon as the August 23rd SAT this year. If you're feeling like I want to utilize summer to prep, I'm concerned that my my junior year is going to be so busy. I'm going to have 4 APs. I have 3 varsity sports. I'm really concerned that I'm not going to be able to like prep a whole lot during the year. I can't add it to the plate. You may want to say, let's get a first shot in before junior year starts and go hard at the August SAT. On the other hand, if you've got a very busy summer, you're going to be traveling a lot. You're not going to be able, to do that, and you're not so concerned about junior year. It is totally fine for you to wait. But I would say, like, don't let the math sequence Algebra 2 get too far from your just from memory. So I'd say, like, yeah, take the exam, take your first exam sometime between the August exam and the December test. Now, they just instated a new SAT test date, September 13th. That is not necessarily available in every state. So you would have to kind of do a little bit more research on that, or text me if you're a little worried about that September date. It may or may not be eligible. You may not or may not be near a location where that's offered. Now, what if you are what if we kind of say I'm a junior but I have not yet taken Algebra 2. So for rising juniors, maybe I'll switch that text color there. For rising juniors who are not taking Algebra 2 until junior year, what should you do? Well, I would be concerned about taking the SAT too early. There are people in this boat who may still take the August 23rd SAT, but they have to accept the fact that they can't maximize their math score really until later on. So you might want to take a first shot, but you're definitely going to come back to it. I would say in that case, you might want to do something more like start with the March or the May SAT. And I think the May SAT, you're even maybe pushing the start date a little bit too much just because you can only take it until October of senior year. So I think the May is okay. But I kind of more want to say, you know what, you're not through Algebra 2 yet, but you're halfway through. Maybe my recommendation is maybe start with the March SAT. And then, like I said, you can go earlier than this on the timeline, but the earlier you go, the less Algebra 2 you'll have. Now, if you are a rising senior and you have not taken the SAT yet, or you're wondering how many dates do I have left, then you can take the SAT up until the October exam. Now, if not applying early action or early decision, you can likely take it up until the December exam. Now, you want to check college deadlines. If you're not doing early action or early decision, then chances are the deadline for applications is not till January 1st or January 15th. So even the December SAT of your senior year is possible. So,
So
but
Jen,
you want
I'm
to
just
have a
gonna
few
jump in real
before.
quick here since we're
Yeah.
talking about the dates for
Yeah, this is your
action
own.
early decision. That's just a real quick thing. There are a couple of schools that have early action deadlines of October 15th. So, just to put that into account, like if you are applying to a couple of those schools that have early action dates of October 15th, I would recommend taking that September or August SAT as your last one and not necessarily banking on October 4th, just
Okay.
because it does take a couple of weeks for those scores to come in.
Okay, so I'm just gonna
But
add that kind of one note, like that per exam is, and the reason why I'm kind of putting all these notes up, um, um, for is because it might be convenient for anyone watching. You might want to screenshot now, or you might want to just even take a photo of the screen with your phone. Therefore, like you'll kind of like have it all.
yeah, yeah.
And
So
I
that's
think that's really the basics.
Mhm.
Jen, anything to add or any questions on this issue?
We do have a question in the chat. It says, if I have taken Algebra 2 and I just get started to prepare for SAT, in general, how long should I study before taking an SAT exam?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question.
Mhm.
I recommend, and there are different fields of thought on this, and it depends on your endurance level. I like the 6 to like, I would say something like a 6 to 10 week prep period. Now, too much less than 6 weeks, then like there's not enough time to build the momentum. I feel like you should take a few weeks worth of weekly practice tests, have time to look at the wrong answers and try to figure those out. I feel like when people are making a real difference in their score, 100 points plus, it's through momentum, so, and that takes at least kind of 5 6 weeks. Too much more than like 9 or 10 weeks. I will say I do see fatigue setting in, and scores might level out or even start to decrease because you're just getting tired. So that's kind of the ballpark I like students to be in, but it does depend on your personality and your endurance. Like some people are crammers and some people have the endurance to prep for a long time. Now that said, when I say 6 to 10 weeks, that's for one particular exam. If you're planning on taking the exam twice, which a lot of people do, you're going to take the August test and you're also going to take maybe the December one. You might prep for like 6 to 8 weeks before the August, and then maybe not as long before the December. Maybe since you've already been there once, it's more like 4 to 6 weeks. So I'm not saying that the sum total might not be more than that, but for any one exam, I like 6 to 10 weeks.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions on that?
I think we're good.
Okay. All right. So I will now head to our agenda. That would be the test calendar. Next thing on the timeline is just kind of optimizing your study attack. Um, what, how should I study? What materials should I use? And so I have a few pieces of advice down here, and also I can include these PDFs when we email you, so you also have this. But going over this here, number one of the most important things, I feel like you want to stick to one exam. I don't love alternating between SAT and ACT or trying to prep for both because I feel like you're diluting your efforts and not maximizing your score on either one. So decide on an exam, which I'll talk about later. How do I decide and stick to that exam? That's my advice there. Um, Now, in terms of how to prep, like what materials do you prep with? Well, for the SAT, you're going to prep digitally. The SAT is a fully digital exam, and there's a link, Blue Book, and to download. Now, actually, that link is also. Let me see if I can go back to my website. Under diagnostics and planning on my website, there is this link is there to download Blue Book. That's the application through which you take practice tests and real tests. You do need a College Board account in order to do that. I can answer any questions on what that is or how to get one. But basically, you will take Blue Book practice tests. Um, and I'm also going to go into Blue Book later on and show you a practice test. Now, if it's the ACT, then right now it is in the process of switching to a digital exam, but I have not yet seen a resource for digital ACTs. So for that exam, I do have a link on my site to here's Blue Book again, and there's an Amazon link on my site for the official ACT prep guide, the people who actually design, the test makers themselves and practice tests. I can tell you if you want to ask at any point, like, what other companies do you like, Princeton Review or Kaplan or Barron's? Yeah, I can make other recommendations. There are companies I really like, and some that I don't feel are that true to the test. But that link on my site is going to be, there's a link to what I would use for ACT. Um, let's see. Let me go back into that. So I like test materials that are made by the official test writers. Um, Now, basically, a very good prep plan is just to take a practice test each week or at least once every other week, and build momentum that way. But in between practice tests, you definitely want to review your tests. There's going to be answer keys to the tests in all the resources I've given. If you don't analyze your past mistakes, I think it's very hard to know what you did wrong and how to change, and therefore how to improve your score. I do like keeping a photo log of missed questions. I like to photo, just right on my phone, questions I want to deal with. So then, rather than having to lug around a book or having to bring my laptop so I'm opening up the digital test, if I just want to review a little bit, like waiting in line for something or on the bus or just whenever, we always have our phones with us. I can at least flip through. And even if don't have pencil and paper out and I'm not redoing the problems, I can at least kind of mentally go through, like, what would I do on this? So I like a photo log. The next point, be consistent. I don't like spreading prep out the whole year. I think you're going to build momentum by working every week in a 1 to 2 month period before the test rather than scattering prep here and there. And then the last 2 points, work in small chunks and work in large chunks. Small chunks means, like, we don't always have time to sit down and do a huge practice test. So on the ACT, for example, an ACT reading passage, if you break it down time wise, is worth about 9 minutes. You could say, look, reading's my weakest point. I want to do a lot of this. You can do one ACT reading passage per day. And then 9 minutes is a very small commitment, maybe 15 or 20 minutes if you're really digging into the wrong answers. On the other hand, you've got to build endurance. You've got to perfect your overall process. So I do believe in, like, take full timed exams, especially in one sitting. It may not be in one sitting every time, but, like, at least, some of the tests you take should be in one big sitting so that you know what test day feels like and so that you're building the right endurance. But since we don't have the time every week to do that, the small chunk option, it keeps things going too.
That's great
Um,
advice, Jim. Yeah, I just want to bring up one kind of like question that I get that I hear from students all the time is that sometimes they'll do the large chunk one where they sit down for a full exam, but they don't time it. So I'm just like, really? Like, I feel like you should time it. So what's your thoughts on that? Because I think the counter argument would be, I just want to get everything, like see if I can do it, like see if I know everything and not be under time pressure. But at the same time, I feel like you also need to know like what the time pressure feels like.
I
What do you think?
agree with you. And there's again, there's different fields of thought, but I feel if I'm doing a practice test, I'm timing it. Now that doesn't mean that you can't do untimed practice, but there's other resources besides practice tests. There's question sets, and one thing I just kind of you reminded me off the cuff. I want to point. I'm going to go share screen, not to my website, but I'm going to Google SAT College Board Question Bank. Now, here's an example of a resource that is not taking practice tests. It's made by College Board, um, and this is on the College Board website. And again, I can supply the link. But in this, you actually, I'm going to take you through the menus. I'm going to choose SAT. I'm going to say I want to practice math. I only this is nice because you can click them all, but you can also just focus in certain areas. I only want to practice geometry and trig, um, and then I can select difficulty level. I can even break down specific geometry areas, um, and then um, this is just focused practice in geometry and trig. I'm not going to time it. I can't time it. It's not a section. So I am in agreement with you. I am in your kind of arena on this, Jen. I feel like if I'm doing I have other sources I can use for non-timed practice. And there's a limited number of practice tests. I believe in taking them in the manner that you have to take them on test day, because the battle isn't just can I do the questions? The battle is can I do the questions efficiently enough for the time I'm given? And if you're not practicing that at least most of the time, then you're not really going to be prepared for what you have to deal with on test day.
That's great, Jim. Yeah, thank you for the advice. So, I love the small chunks one, and I love the question bank because, as
Yeah,
all the students are so busy with other activities and classes, and it's really difficult to sit down for a large period of time to do those practice tests. So we can't do too many of those, but having like even 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, that's really awesome to have those resources.
absolutely. So now what I want to do, so that's optimizing your study attack. Um, and I want to now just give you a quick overview of the exams. So the first thing I'm going to do is an SAT exam. And I mentioned you have to download Blue Book. So this is the app Blue Book. And anyone can text me or Jen again in terms of getting the app. But once you have Blue Book downloaded, you do need a College Board account. And again, we'll send the link that's collegeboard.org. Um, and I'll sign in. Oops. And then once you're into Blue Book, now this is actually what you're in on test day too. So you have to download Blue Book to be able to take the actual SAT. But for practice, there's not really too many fields. Full length practice, SAT. There are currently 7 available SAT practice tests on Blue Book. I have resources for additional tests if you would want them. Um, if you do have accommodations for extra time, you can do that by toggling that field. And I'll click next. I'll begin the exam. Now this will be a quick overview. If you have Blue Book, don't you can explore an exam and then restart it. So don't worry about losing an exam. Um, like I can retake this test as many times as I want. So if you just want to go in and look at it, you can. Um, The SAT has two reading writing sections. This is reading writing. They really call them modules. Module 1, 32 minutes, 27 questions. You'll notice that I have a vocab question here. What completes the text with the most logical vocabulary word? When I can navigate forward and backwards. So even though I'm clicking answers, this is true on the real test, they're not finalized. I can go back and change them. I can mark a question for review if I've answered it, but I'm unsure. I can also, there is an elimination function. So maybe I've decided two choices are wrong, but I'm not sure what I want to do next. I could just leave it like that. And if I go back, A and D will still be eliminated. And then one extra feature, I can highlight text. So if I click on that, and especially for like a reading comprehension passage, maybe I want to highlight a particular detail. Now, if I highlight something and navigate away, that highlight will still be there when I go back. Now, for the reading writing, they clump questions into specific areas. So what you are seeing so far up to question 5 is vocab questions. What's the right vocab word? When I finish this clump, you're going to see now that I'm into reading comprehension. So they give me short reading passages, one question per passage, with a question such as, what's true about a specific detail, what's the main idea. Um, the reading comprehension stretch is the longest stretch. They will ask you to what would support a claim in the passage. They might ask you to use data to support a particular assertion in a passage. And you'll notice I went pretty far into the section and was still on reading, but then the third clump of questions is now grammar. So grammar, reading comprehension, vocabulary, it's all in one section, but they clump them into groups. The grammar is going to be punctuation. It will also involve things like pronouns and verb form and verb tense. And then I'm almost at the end of the section. Question type number 4 is what would be the most logical transitionary word. So transition questions are a minor question type that is the fourth type. So vocab, reading comp, grammar, and now transition. And the final question type is called a synthesis question. They'll say the student has taken the following notes. They'll give you a series of notes, and they'll ask you what most effectively uses these notes to present something. So it's kind of like a different type of reading comprehension passage, really. The order always remains the same. The number of each question type might vary slightly. It's not like there's always going to be 6 vocab questions. Some tests could have 5, some sections could have 5, some could have 8, but it's always the same order. And that's a reading comprehension, a reading writing section. Now, when you get to the end of a section, if there's still time on the board, they'll check your work, make sure you've answered everything. Of course, if I've marked questions for review, did I go back to them? There's no wrong answer penalty. Answer everything, even if it's got to be a quick guess because you're running out of time. And they will then, once you click next after that, you can't go back. Now, here's another, the second portion is another reading writing section. Same, and it's presented the same way as you saw before, with the vocab first, the reading comps second, etc. But it's an adaptive test. If you do well on reading writing module 1, you're in a harder reading writing module 2. And if you did not answer a certain benchmarks of questions correct in reading writing module 1, then you're in an easier section. You want to be in the harder module because that will lead to the potential for higher scores. Whereas if you're in the easier reading writing module, you can still score well, but you're capped off at a certain maximum score that won't be the perfect 800. So I won't really go through the second reading writing module. It's the same number of times, same organization, same number of questions. Again, at the end, it will ask me, it'll say check your work. And then on the real test day, you will have a break. And on the practice test, they'll give you a break. But on the practice test, it's an optional break. You can resume. I think on the real test, you have to take the 10-minute break. And then the math. Now, the math is not organized into question clumps. It's a mixture of algebra, geometry, and statistics in no particular order. The math modules do get harder as you go through them. So the questions generally, the easier questions will be at the beginning of a module, harder at the end. Math is 35 minutes and 22 questions. See, you still have the elimination function, but some of the tools are different. There is an in-application calculator that is mainly useful for things like functions in the XY plane. Graphing functions is a little bit quicker, I would say, in the in-app calculator, and the fact that you can move around the XY plane, it's a little bit nicer there than on the handheld, but you are allowed your handheld scientific calculator as well. And geometry formulas, unlike on the ACT, most major geometry formulas are provided in this reference box. The only other nuance about the math is not all the questions are multiple choice. Scattered, there's about 3 to 6 questions where it's student response. You can grid in an integer, a fraction, a decimal, positive or negative values. And that's about it really on the math navigation. Same structure on the math. If you it's an adaptive test, so if you do well on module 1, you will be kicked into a harder module 2 that offers you the potential for higher scores. Module 2 but same type of question spread: geometry, statistics, and algebra, same number of times, same number of questions. And then at the end of a practice test, oh, and by the way, you can save and exit wherever you want. I don't have to complete the test in one sitting. I can save, I can exit. When I come back in, the test will begin with exactly the amount of time I had left and exactly where I was in the section. And if it's a practice test, it will self-grade. And the results of your test will not be in the Blue Book application. They will end up, this will redirect me to College Board .org, where my College Board account is. So just the same way you would receive real SAT results on your College Board account, your practice test results will also go there as well. You can look at explanations to missed questions as well. So that's what an SAT exam looks like. And are there any questions on the navigation or or the functionality of the SAT?
Jim, do you know if the students are supposed to provide their own computers, or do the schools typically provide like a
Great
Chromebook or
question.
something?
A lot of school students have their own school issued Chromebook, and most people would use that. You're also allowed to bring in any laptop. So if you have a Chromebook, but you like your Apple computer at home, you can bring that in. That's fine. And at least as far as I know in New York State, and I assume this is true for all states, if you do not have a laptop, tablet, or some device that could accommodate the digital SAT, the school provides one for you. I don't want to say that's universal, but as far as I know, every school I've ever seen around where I am, they have to provide one if you don't have.
And does the school provide scratch paper as well?
Excellent question. Yeah, you get scratch paper as well for both the reading, writing, and the math sections. Good question.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions right now?
If we have any questions, feel free to pop it in the chat.
Okay,
Otherwise, oh, a lot of
perfect.
good
Good one.
information. Would you provide? Yes, we will have a copy of the recording. It will be sent out to the email that you used to sign up for the webinar.
Perfect. Yes, and then we will try to provide all the like necessary links as well. Like any kind of material that I'm showing here, we'll try to put it in there. If we forget something, just let us know. So the next thing is an ACT. Now I'm going to go back to my website so that I can open up an ACT. And I uh, I will kind of give you a caveat here that the ACT is now currently under um, is now undergoing a change to digital. Even on the official ACT website, I do not see a diagnostic for the digital ACT. That's fully digital. If anybody we would reply to our email if you do have a link to one, that would be great. But I haven't seen one yet. However, um, an ACT in its older form is not too bad a representation. They have not really changed the content or style of the test so much as just put it on computer and maybe altered the number of questions per section and the times a little bit. So an ACT um, will does not put grammar and reading comprehension in one section like the SAT. They have a separate grammar section and a separate reading comp section. It begins with the English or the grammar section. You'll notice the passages are actually longer form. And in English section 1, you are replacing underlined portions of text with the correct grammatical choice. Um, and an ACT grammar section has 5 long passages with underlined portions throughout where you're replacing it with different possibilities of vocab and grammar. And a total of 75 questions for the English/grammar section. Now, the new ACT is also going to have an English or grammar section of this style with they altered the number of questions and timing. Section 2 is math. Math is pretty cut and dry. The old ACT, it was 60 minutes, 60 questions. It's a little bit different in timing and number of questions, but otherwise, the math is all multiple choice. You bring your own calculator. There's no non-multiple choice fill-in questions. The math does get harder as you go. And like the SAT, it's a mixture of geometry, algebra, and statistics in no particular order. That is a quick look at what a math section would be. Now, I mentioned the reading, comp, and the grammar are not in the same section like the SAT. Here's an ACT reading comprehension section. They're not short, choppy passages with one question each. They're longer passages, each with 10 questions, and there are 4 of these. And the topic areas are always going to be fiction, then social studies, then humanities, and then science. So that's kind of the format here. 40 total questions, 4 passages, 10 per. So you see, you do have to kind of maintain more of a consistent focus on one topic for an ACT reading comp. The SAT doesn't have a science section, a section that's it may have science questions, but the SAT doesn't have a science section that is solely devoted to science. The ACT does. It does not really require your knowledge of science from school, like your knowledge of like specific biology and chem and physics concepts. It's more basically another reading comprehension section, but combined with data analysis. So they'll give you a passage which describes an experiment, gives you the results in the form of data, and then asks you to answer questions that hinge upon the procedure of the experiment and also maybe the exact data. So see it more like another reading comp section, but where you're also analyzing data. Here's another passage and another set of questions. Here's another passage and another set of questions. And yeah, the questions are basically a mixture of data analysis and reading comprehension. So in a way, the ACT is less math oriented overall. The SAT has two math sections. The ACT really only has one. And what they're replacing it with is a science section, which is closer to me to reading comprehension than it would be to math. And that is a paper ACT. Now, I didn't do this for the SAT, but I will do this for the ACT. Stand by. Yep, hang on. There we go. I am going to compare the old and new ACT because the change is occurring kind of as we speak. But first, are there any questions out
So, Jim, no questions on the ACT, but we do have a question about preparation for SAT. And
there?
if I understand correctly, the question, which I just asked for some clarification, so apologize if I get the question wrong. But the question is asking for suggestions to do what to do like the last week before the SAT date, because there is one coming up in June and
Mm-hmm.
I think there's about a week left. So I think the
Okay.
question is like, what can I do now, in this last week to best prepare? I think
All
that's what the
right.
question means.
Now, I would say this is what I would say. So the last week, um, if you have not taken a practice test, or you have only taken one practice test, as hard as this might be to fit in, I would definitely say that like you want to take another like practice test, because if you haven't taken one, or you're only taken one, you're not prepared enough in terms of the overall pacing and major game plan. Now, on the other hand, I would say like if you have taken two, like let's say kind of 3 to 4 practice tests, especially if you've done a lot of them in one sitting. I think you are more familiar with the overall pacing and game plan. And I actually don't think taking another test in the last week is going to raise your score on test day as much as doing this. Um, go through your past tests, and like review or even redo the past missed questions, and this is important, that you have figured out. I don't mean try to uh, to deal like go through the time consuming process of like figuring out the solutions to problems you haven't looked at. But you know how like you figured them out in the past, but you want to make sure you haven't forgotten the solution. You want to make sure you re-solidify your understanding. um I feel like you don't want to come into the test being like, oh shoot, or see a question on the test being like, oh no, I had one like this on the practice test, and I got it wrong, and I knew that I figured out the solution and I understood it, but now I've forgotten it. Um, I think that you want to re-solidify all the things that you've kind of figured out from your past tests. And I want to also say that's especially in math and grammar, because math and grammar are the most repetitive formulaic issues on the test. You might not want to revisit reading comprehension questions because, reading comprehension passages are fairly unique anyway. So think about where you are. Have you not taken many practice tests? Maybe take another test. If you have, I think you're going to benefit your score much more by re-solidifying past issues.
Great. Thank you, Jim. That's great advice. Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I mean, the last week, it really kind of depends if you had already prepared. If you had done like the 6 to 10 weeks preparation, whether on your own or with a gym or another class, then I think, you just want to rest well. You
Yeah.
want to, eat well, rest well, sleep well, make sure you're healthy, going to the test. Um, but if you're not really that prepared, I think taking a practice test is great, one or two if you have the chance, and just get yourself prepared and like kind of in that mindset of what the test is like. And then don't sweat it too much. There's always, another one that you could take, even if this one doesn't go so great for you, if it wasn't, really that solid preparation. So great question. Thank you. And then are we okay for another question, Jim?
Sure, sure.
Okay. So this is a question kind of specific to your prep options. So someone wants to know if they already have a 1350 on an
hmm
SAT test, should that student take your level 2 class or the level 1 class?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. So, actually, it's funny that you mentioned that exact number
Mhm.
because on my hang on one second. That you mentioned 1350 because and this is on my site too, but if here's a good example, my level one class, generally beginners would start here, but the level two class, it basically says take after level one, or if you're scoring around a 1350 or better, yeah, I think like you're in good enough shape to skip over level one and just begin right with the advanced class, although I would give some prerequisite work. And then even like depending on your experience level and other factors, even students that have had like 1250, they've started with the level two course. So quick answer to that question would be like in that student's case, I would say level two.
Great. Thank you, Jim.
All right. And give me one more sec. I want to get back to where I was here. Let's see. All right. So if that's it for now, then I'll just do a quick rundown of old ACT versus new ACT. Now, everybody saw an old ACT. An old ACT is administered on paper. A new ACT, actually, they're going to give you the choice. You can still take it on paper. It'll look a lot like what you saw, or you can take it online, and it's going to be basically the same thing, but converted to an online medium. The test duration didn't change much. The new SAT exam is only about 2 hours and 15 minutes. The ACT is closer to 3 hours, whether it's old or new. Now, this is a little bit of a weird caveat on time. The science section on the ACT is now optional. So, yes, if you leave out the science section, then I guess the new ACT is about as short as the new SAT. I don't really like the idea of like not taking the science though, because we don't exactly know which colleges are going to say they want the science section at this point and which colleges are going to say it's okay not to have it. So if I was taking the ACT right now, I would take the science section and plan on like the 2 hours and 45 minutes that the new ACT is. Now, the test format has not changed that much. It still goes in terms of like English, math, reading, science. But you will notice that the number of questions has become shorter. English went from 75 down to 50. And yes, they shortened the amount of time too, but not as much as the amount of questions. So let's take the English section, for example. The English section used to be only 36 seconds per question. Now it's 42 seconds per question. I think the one criticism of the ACT is that it was too fast, like you had to move very quickly. I still think you have to move pretty quickly on the ACT, but they slowed down the pace a little bit. So not only fewer questions, but more time per question. You'll notice that's the same thing if you look at the math, same kind of thing. It used to be a minute per question, now it's a little more than a minute per question. And also they shortened the math section. Um, and reading, science, same thing. Like the time per question has increased, although the amount of time on the section overall actually like increased a little bit. So basically, like the pace is a little bit easier than it used to be. The scoring has not changed. 0 through 36 was the old ACT scoring. It still basically is. And score wait time is about the same. And then one more point on the new ACT. If you are taking the paper version of the ACT this summer, it actually is going to be still the old ACT with exactly what the number of questions and sections that you saw me show you. If you are taking the digital ACT this summer, then you've got those format changes. The format changes do not go into effect for the paper version of the exam until the fall. So ACT is definitely a little bit confusing right now. Like, yeah, you can take it online, you can take it on paper. The changes are in effect for the online version now, but they're not in effect yet until the fall for the paper version. So just text me if you need an update on that. Or actually, I do have a link that also summarizes these changes in more detail. All right. Any last, that's it. We're going to be heading into the last chunk of things, but any other questions on ACT before I move on?
Nope, I think we're good, Jim. I think it'll
Great.
be good. We're coming up in an hour, so
No worries. This is actually just 3 minutes deciding which exam is right for you, pros and cons to each, and I can
perfect. That
easily,
was gonna
yeah.
be my question. How do people decide?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to actually say, first thing, the only way to really know what is best for you, it is an endeavor, but take a practice SAT, take a practice ACT. And if you need help comparing scores, like which one did I do better on, I have a concordance table on my website, or you can shoot me a text, me or Jen, a text or an email, and I can help you compare. But the only way to know is to take a practice test of each. Now, if you want like a quicker, dirtier version of like how I might kind of like say which to take, here's the advantages to the SAT. It's a shorter test. If you like that, the SAT is going to be shorter, 2 hours and 14 minutes as opposed to near 3 hours with the ACT. SAT involves shorter streams of concentration. So you notice the passages are just single paragraph, one question each. The ACT, they're much bigger passages. The SAT math, I think, is more hackable. I can't get into the details here, but I could later. The in-application calculator for the math is very powerful, has a lot of tools, and there's like a lots of ways to like plow through tough questions with that in-app calculator. I don't know that the ACT in-app calculator is as powerful. That's a little bit of a question mark. The SAT is narrower in scope. I think like for math and grammar, the SAT does not draw from as many topics as the ACT. So like ACT geometry, any type of shape you can imagine, like parallelograms, a rhombus, a trapezoid, a hexagon, there's an ACT question for that. The math is like the geometry on the SAT. It's like, okay, I can give you like the 6 shapes they like to do, and they basically stick to that. And then last, I don't know if this is an advantage or a disadvantage, depends on your strengths. The SAT is 50% math. If you are a math person, maybe you want to do the SAT instead. Because when I go down to the ACT is only 25% pure math. Okay, now again, if you're not a math person, then that's an advantage for the ACT on the ACT for you. Now, other things about the ACT, it will have a choice of medium. If you are not a computer test person, if you like paper, maybe the ACT is better. And I think the big thing about the ACT is, yes, there's more questions, but I agree with this, and I think most people do. The ACT questions are not as tricky. They're much more direct. They're not as like dense and thick and tough to wade through. They're to the point, and they're less trap oriented. So that's kind of a basic lowdown, but I do think you kind of have to take a test of each to really know what's best.
Yeah, I would agree,
And
Jim. I think a lot of students, and this could just be like a geographic area thing. But a lot of students that I see really just gravitate toward the SAT. But I feel like they're sometimes selling themselves short because they're not even trying the ACT. Because sometimes they could be that student where they would be, really like the
yeah,
2 point questions, and that could be a big advantage to them. So I would recommend people to just at least try it, even if it's not the whole entire test, but just try a few
yeah,
questions and then see how you
yeah.
feel.
Try an SAT math section and try an ACT math section. That's like okay, well, that's like an hour and a half of my time.
Mhm.
And if that shed light on a path that I didn't think I was going to take, and I would say, look, I mean, in my experience, about 75% of people perform equally. Like, so it doesn't really matter which one you take. But for about 25% of people, they're surprised and they're like, oh, I thought I was taking the SAT, but I scored like a major amount higher on the ACT. And I didn't think I was going to do this exam, but man, thank God I like took a look at this because this is a big game changer for me. Like I said, it's not most students, but I would say like, there's a decent cross section where that could happen.
Mm. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jim, and thank you for those who stood by till the end.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of info.
It's a great info. Thank you. So we will be sending out the PDF that Jim has, our contact information, the links to all of those resources as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to either one of us. I'm gonna just go ahead and put my website in the chat here again as well. Both of our contact informations are listed on our websites as well. So feel free to reach out anytime, and we're really glad that you could join us today.
Thank you, everybody, so much.
Thank you, Jim. We'll see you guys soon.